общения, обмена идеями и формирования новых партнерских проектов. Я с большим удовольствием передам это приветствие министру просвещения Российской Федерации Сергею Сергеевичу Кравцову, организаторам форума. Хочу добавить, что Россия и Индия в своей истории имеют богатейшую историю взаимодействия во многих сферах и отраслях жизнедеятельности. Мы, две страны, ориентированы на развитие человеческого капитала. И как ни вложение в образовательную сферу, в детей, позволит нам получить самый максимальный результат и создать поколение, будущее поколение детей конкурентоспособными на мировой арене. Хочу заверить всех, что российская система образования готова обеспечить широчайший спектр сотрудничества в образовательной сфере и в части академических обменов, и совместных научных разработок и различных проектов, студенческих обменов, которые позволят глубже узнать культуру, историю наших стран. Ну и, конечно же, наши вузы с большим удовольствием готовы принимать индийских студентов у себя на обучение, получение образования. От души желаю успехов, плодотворного сотрудничества, новых знакомств и дружбы в будущем. Спасибо.
Мы все благодарим вас, Денис Евгеньевич. Спасибо. Вчера состоялись переговоры Дениса Евгеньевича в Министерстве образования Индии. Обсуждались подробно перспективы дальнейшего сотрудничества с Индией в этом направлении. И как вчера было отмечено на встрече, что отличительной чертой российского образования является то, что это не только образование, но еще и воспитание. И вот это вот как раз вот эта совокупность, сочетание двух этих факторов и делает его настолько привлекательным и действенным, и правильным. So now I would like to invite here the Member Secretary of the Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister of India, please, Mr. Ratan Tata, please.
Ambassador Plenipotentiary Mr. Alipov, Trade Ambassador Mr. Rebus, Education Minister Mr. Dennis, Mr. Pavel Shevtov, and Oleg, thank you for inviting me to the dais. Chancellors of universities, rectors, representatives who've come from Russia for this Indo-Russia Education Summit. I must say that I'm humbled that you've called me here and I'm in your presence. Actually, Russia has a long-standing and time-tested partnership with India, and this message has been coming across in all the speeches that have been made by the dignitaries just now. And development of India-Russia relations has been a key pillar of India's foreign policy also. Since the signing of the declaration on the India-Russia strategic partnership in the year 2000, October, India-Russia ties have acquired a qualitatively new character and enhanced levels of cooperation in almost all areas of the bilateral relationships, including political, security, trade and economy, defense, science and technology, culture and education. There are two intergovernmental commissions which meet annually. They are high-powered bodies. And I think all this which is happening is coming out of this umbrella relationship that we have. Personally, I have very fond memories of my visits to Moscow during my younger days as a civil servant, and I've been around for nearly 45 years. They were old times, and the times have changed, but the relationships haven't. And my visits then were also connected with culture, education, and the work related to the culture and education ministries. And if I had time, I could regale you with many interesting incidents which we had when we used to visit Moscow and our counterparts would come to India. But back to the business of this education summit for which we are gathered, where I would like to highlight a few things, which I'm sure is already in your strategy mix or your strategy matrix. And I found that in Ambassador Alipov's speech when he was making it. I will perhaps be echoing some of those ideas, but I'd like to add something more as I conclude. As you all know, the GDP or the gross domestic product of India has crossed $3.5 trillion. This value also represents about 1.5% of the world economy. It may sound a small number, but in actuals and real value, it's huge. Now, where does education or where does the education sector fit into this economic framework? I'm just trying to give you an idea, because then a lot of the things which were said would fit in to this matrix which I mentioned. Now, some reports say that the education sector in India was estimated to be worth 117 billion US dollars in financial year 2020, and is expected to reach nearly 225 billion by the year 2025, another couple of years. This trend shows that this sector is increasing at a very fast pace. And I say this because the policy spectrum of education in India is being driven by the new Education Policy 2020, which had been mentioned by some of my speakers, of the speakers on the dais. This is a very wholesome document that the entire nation, all the states, union territories of this country have accepted. And under its umbrella, the entire gamut of education is undergoing a very meaningful change. The school system is changing, the university system is changing, along with the regulation systems. And what we are doing in this NEP 2020 is realigning the system to the aspirations of the 21st century or the coming century, which we are living in. Now, these changes are going to have a far-reaching effect on the aspirations of the students coming out of the system, both at the school level and also at the university level. And also, given the open nature of of the Indian economy and also the growing incomes, many of these aspirants from the system will be looking beyond national borders to see and seek education opportunities, which again give value for money. I was just glancing through some figures, and I found that there are estimates that direct spending on overseas education by Indian students amounted to nearly $47 billion in the year 2022, which is expected to rise as high as 70 billion by 2025. This again is a huge amount. This figure includes, of course, tuition fees, spending, housing, other living expenses when they go out. Now, this cake of the education services is a sizable amount and worth looking at. Another little statistics which I just want to mention is that by the year end, there will be perhaps around 48 million tertiary level students. it's between 18 and 25. I mean, these are the student mass which goes into the higher education system, which is the largest in the world. I mean, I believe China would have about 37 million only. Now, these are potentially students from which a small percentage will go out to study. Now, we are talking of numbers, Ambassador mentioned, many others mentioned 25,000, 30,000. Now, the numbers which are going out to OECD countries or to the US or other Anglophone countries is running in the 250,000. I mean, the numbers are really big. So what I was just trying to say, the number of tertiary students, the cake in the market, I think there's a huge potential. And all of you are here, the universities are here, you're going around. You should, in fact, apart from Delhi, I think not now, maybe later, even go across to other big cities in this country, Bangalore, Chennai, Bombay, Calcutta, because the education system here is, again, under our constitution, it's divided in the sense both the federal government and the state government have jurisdiction over it. So your engagements with state governments and provincial governments would also be very useful. Now, I had some suggestions about, of course, what has been coming up and what has traditionally been seen in this 25,000 or 20,000 youngsters who go out. It's really in technology, medical sciences. I mean, these are the preferred fields. But as was mentioned just now, that the university systems which you represent over here are very strong in the sciences, in technology, and even in the arts. I mean, that's a huge area which we can look at. I mean, I can tell you that a niece of mine who many years back opted to go to Moscow to study in the State Institute of Theatre Arts and spent many years there. She speaks perfect Russian. She runs a avant-garde theatre company in Bombay. I mean, there are people like this, you just don't have to think science and technology. I think you're very, very strong in the arts. And that's another area which you can look at where there will be a demand, which will be mutually beneficial. It could be the film industry, filmmaking. These are areas which are also very strong, and India is also very strong in it. Another area which I can mention is also teaching of languages. I think it has been mentioned that how somebody said that maybe the Russian students would come here and we can go there. Actually, I'm a civil servant, and I have served in many ministries and organizations across several decades. And one of the things I opted at that time in my younger years was take an advantage of a system like this. I went to France and I studied there. Of course, I was given a support, a boost, a scholarship. It was after I got into service, and one of the things which I did was the first year I just immersed myself in learning French, just to understand the French administrative system. And there was a Ministry of Francophonie which was supporting all this. Now, Russia has a fantastic history of language, of literature. I think these are also areas which can be built on, where these exchanges could happen, where we learn about the way you administer yourselves. I learned a lot about the European Union, about how Brussels works, how the French administrative system works. There were a lot of similarities, there were a lot of dissimilarities. But I came back with a lot of rich experience. I think this is an area where, under your larger these annual exercises which you have, Ambassador, you could think of it. It's just a suggestion. Well, I'm aware there are deeper government-to-government relationships on the science side, but these could go beyond. I'm currently working voluntarily in an area of tuberculosis research. As you may know, India has one of the largest caseloads of TB in the world. In fact, I was just, when the G20 meetings were going on, I found that the entire BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, actually carry 50 to 60% of the TB load of the world. It's all sitting in the G20. But also the money and the research is there. Why can't we work on these things across universities, scientific universities? This is an area which will be mutually beneficial to both sides. It's just an example where we can move forward, and I think the universities which I see here, I'm sure you have departments which can handle these kind of things. Another area which I must tell you, because I said in my old association was with a ministry, it used to be called the Human Resource Development Ministry. It happened in the 80s. It was an omnibus ministry which dealt with education, culture, health, family welfare, women and child development, sports, and film development. It actually half the government was in that ministry. And I recall that one of the biggest, strongest partnerships we had with Moscow at that time was in the field of sports. I mean, here it's another emerging area which is coming up, and your university systems in Russia are fantastic in that also. I mean, you may be science universities, technology universities, but today India is aspiring to be also a sporting nation. And I'm saying this because I was associated in the organization of the Commonwealth Games. And one of the things which we did when we were working with Australia, which has a very strong, again, a sports tradition, we tied up with universities in sports management. There was mutual demand for all this. I mean, we can look at areas which are a little unusual, from sports or... So I'll now conclude, because I thought I could go on. There is no end to this. There's a lot of potential in our relationship which we can build on. And again, I thank all of you to invite me here. You have invited me here, and I'm sure this summit will produce a lot of good results. And I wish you all the very best. Thank you.